Alright, so we drown in the depths of the ocean because the mermaid just, wants to just keep us there forever. But instead of that, we, I guess, reverse time and now we're back on the path. This time, how about we just go to the village? Surely nothing bad will happen, in this scenario. We're just gonna go to the village instead. So you want to go to the village? Good idea. Let us see what further trials await you there. This night is far from over. As much as you might wish it was, and there's so much more, and there's still much and more? Does that make sense actually? The night's far from over, and there's still much and more to discover. I mean, I guess it makes sense. I don't know, I just feel weird. It just feels weird to me. I would say that there's still much more to discover, but maybe there is much and more to discover. I don't know. I have no idea. I feel like the author is like way smarter than me when it comes to writing. So whenever I like question whether or not if it's like a grammar issue, I don't know if it's just me or like if I'm the one in the wrong. Anyway, I wonder what will happen next. You follow the path which leads to the village, supporting yourself on weary, aching limbs which feel ready at a moment's notice to snap at the knee beneath the burden of your weight. The soles of your feet are screaming at you. You need to lie down and quickly. The only hope as you continue to run that you'll find a suitable residence in which to rest at the village. I mean, it's kind of a classic location probably to run to. Just hope the villagers don't out you and sell you out to whoever's chasing you. But anyway, you do not know what will await you at the village. You have visions as you run of a quaint scenic sentiment. All thatched cottages with sloping roofs. Surely there will be a kindly peasant who will be willing to put up a young runaway for a few nights. You can imagine too the face of this kindly peasant, the fairy tales you've read in abundance as a small child. She would be broad-shouldered and ruddy-faced, with dull brown hair crammed beneath a cap. Her arms would be sturdy from many years of washing clothes and milking cows, but she'd be kind to you and compassionate, just like a mother. You do not know what mothers are like. You hardly ever spoke to yours, and therefore you have mommy issues. Anyway, you're only guessing. You're not a complete fool, however, despite your tendency to daydream, and you do have a few reservations. Peasants do not, as far as you know from your voracious reading, have much money, nor do they have much food. It might be hard to convince a resident of the village, even the kindly washerwoman in your fantasies, to take in a complete stranger. Still, you must try. That's all you can do, really. As you run to the village, it takes some time before you finally emerge from the woods, but finally you manage it. It looks like a nice village, according to the stock photo, I feel like. I don't know. How much time, you ask? You cannot answer that. Did I not say the time had begun to lose all its meaning? The forest is behind you now, at least, and all the awful nightmares which dwelt within it. It is still cold, though, and still foggy. It is still dark, too. The sun has yet to rise. You can see the moon more clearly now, though, as it hangs above your head, round as any pearl or orb or crystal ball. The moonlight shines down upon the village, nestled among the hills like a diorama. Hope anew bubbles within you. You finally made it. Surely not, but your salvation awaits you. You follow the winding dirt path to the village, looking this way and that. But your hope, such a precious, fragile thing, soon begins to fade. The village up close does not look half as welcoming as you imagined. There are cottages, yes, but they're in a state of disrepair. There are holes in the roofs and holes in the windows. Most of the doors are tightly shut, but others are gaping open. The kitchens beyond them even darker than the night sky which shrouds you. There are no lights on any of the windows, and neither can you see any people, insomniacs like you, at them. You cannot hear anything either, beyond the sound of your own footsteps and the low, mournful sighing of the wind. The village is quite quiet, eerily so, just like that Resident Evil game or something. It is immediately obvious, even to a naive girl such as yourself, that something terrible must have befallen this village, and everyone's turned to zombies. Maybe, I don't know. You know before you try your luck at one of the houses that nobody will answer you. There'll be no kindly red-armed washerwoman to welcome you here, no matter how much you wish for it. But that does not stop you from wishing regardless. Your knuckles your knuckles rap smartly against the wooden door. Your efforts soon prove, however, to be in vain. There's nobody here to hear your entreaties. How very sad. You try another door, and then another, but the result is the same regardless of how many doors you rap upon. Despite your sick beats, nobody answers you. How could they? There's nobody there. Once again, you found yourself all alone. At least you have found some dwellings in which you can rest your weary head. Will you utilize one of these cottages for your own purposes? Nobody's here, you might as well. This is a nice upgrade, compared to the last route we did. The shore, we also found like a cottage, but it was kind of like a really run-down one. But, at least in this village, there's like multiple cottages, that we could like use. But no, an abandoned cottage is not what you're looking for. You would far rather have companionship, would you not? Before companionship, you gotta find shelter, okay? What was that? There was like the hierarchy of needs or whatever. You gotta like fulfill that first. Bravely, you swallow your tears. You wipe your eyes with the back of your arm in a well-practiced motion, then inhale. You square your shoulders. You keep on going. Surely the village cannot be completely deserted. There must be one person here, at the very least, who can help you. That's what you're thinking as you resume your search. You flit from cottage to cottage with precious little to show for your determination, until you make yet another discovery. This village, with its squat, thatched cottages bathed in the moon's glow, has a church. Well, of course it has a church. The villagers who once dwelt here were not godless heathens, and not that their faith did them all that much good in the end. Still, the sight of the church soothes your overtaxed heart. Ah yes, God will save us. Praise. Praise God. You are so focused on your fantasies of a kindly washerwoman taking you in, you do not pause to entertain the fancy of a kindly nun doing much the same. All hope is not lost. You approach the church, which seems to tower over you, despite it being so humble. The church is a small one, but it's stout and sturdy. It must be, for it has withstood centuries. Forever standing, sentinel on this hill, like a relic from a bygone era. The church does not have any stained glass windows, but it does not need them. Even without more luxurious trappings, the church still exudes an aura of dignified solemnity. English language. I mean, I know what solemn means, but solemnity, like how you say that? Solemnity? Solemnity. Exudes an aura of dignified solemnity. The stone building is fringed by a sizable graveyard, one which occupies the rest of the hilltop and some of its sloping sides. The graves, which have been planted by generations of wardens, are hewn from a similar stone that which the church's walls are made of. Some of the gravestones are shaped like lozenges, while others are shaped like crosses. Is that right? Lozenges? Am I saying that right? Lozenges. Lozenges? Lozenges. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, that's correct. I don't know. When I think of lozenges, I think of, the cough drops. Yeah, I guess it's pronounced the same. I didn't know that. But lozenge, in this context anyway, is apparently like a diamond shape. So, it's funny. Again, I feel like the author is just using big words, that's too big for my small brain. But basically, it's like some of the gravestones are shaped like diamonds, whatever. But I guess, and using more specific words is sometimes better, right? If you want to convey a certain tone, I guess. But anyway, some of them are shaped like lozenges, while others are shaped like crosses. A handful of headstones are even shaped like angels, though these are few and far in between. There are very few people in a village such as this one who can afford such luxurious, final resting places. You look at the tombstones with an almost childlike curiosity, forgetting in your examination of the visceral, heart-rending fear which gripped you as you ran through the forest. You're out of the woods now, and you have subconsciously already begun to relax. You try to read the names hewn into the myriad tombstones, but It is dark and you are tired, and some of these graves are very, very old indeed. You strain your eyes, but you do not have much luck in this endeavor. Oh well. Such superfluous details are not important. You eventually tire of examining the graves and turn. This graveyard is an expansive one, unusually so, given the village itself is so small. How can it boast so many corpses, and there's so much to explore? You walk about the perimeter of the church, casting your gaze first here, then there, then everywhere, consumed as you are by your immense, all-encompassing curiosity. As you do, you see her. Okay. A shovel? Are you grave robbing? You know, when I think of the church, I was thinking of maybe like a priest, but maybe not.
喜べ、喜べ少女。君の願いはようやくかな。
No, it's this girl instead. She has a hood? She looks like an ordinary girl, small and scrawny, just like yourself, but she's much, much more than her unremarkable appearance might suggest. For some moments, you observe her, hiding all the while in the shadow cast by the church, like a furtive lizard clinging against a rocky edifice to shroud itself from the sun. There's no sunlight here, though. There's only the night sky, and the stars and the moon. Beneath the moon's light, a silvery implement the girl is clutching shimmers. It takes you a few moments to see what it is that the girl is clutching in her hands. It's not until you see her manipulate it, a sharp edge biting to the earth, that you understand. It is a shovel. This girl is standing in an isolated corner of the churchyard, late at night as she's digging a grave. Well, you suppose she could always be digging a hole for the sake of it, but her work seems much too precise for this to be the result of mere whimsy. It's hard for you to see her face, given the distance between the pair of you, but her posture is one that sparks of supreme concentration. What if we just go, we just go behind her and go boo, No. She moves slowly, mechanically, like a woman on a mission, driving the end of her shovel into the earth over and over. Her motions are regular enough to be repetitive. There's something hypnotic, there's something hypnotic, almost, in the manner in which she attends this task. Should you risk interrupting her? Do you dare? You get the feeling that she would not appreciate it. The shovel in her hands, meanwhile, is rather hefty. If she wished it, she could cause you no small amount of damage with it. It does +5 melee damage. Cold anxiety makes your skin prickle. You do not know if you should risk speaking to her when she, in her dark cloak with her shovel, looks so very strange. Does she have like bones? Does she have bones in her cloak thing? But what do you have left to lose? You have come this far. It would be folly to turn back now. It is with this thought in your mind that you decide to approach the strange girl. Your footsteps are quiet. You've grown accustomed to slinking around like a cat, but they're not quiet enough. The girl's senses must be finely tuned because she blinks. Then she turns. Your eyes meet, and once they do, you feel your breath catch in your throat. You did not have a clear view of the girl before, concealed as you were in the shadows, but now she's looking at you. You can tell that she's pretty. It's like every girl you meet in this game. They're just all very pretty. Her skin is very smooth, and her hair, though obscured by a dark hood, is very fair. Her eyes, meanwhile, are clear, cool blue like ice. Those eyes of hers, which are large with unease, are fringed with very long fair eyelashes. She looks as though she has stepped out of the pages of a picture book, as if she was drawn like an anime character. She is simply too perfect to belong to this world. Perhaps she is some kind of vision, a waking dream, a hallucination. But no, she is none of these things. The shovel she is clutching in her hand looks solid enough, its pointed tip glittering wickedly in the moonlight. You steer yourself, expecting perhaps some sort of outburst. The tension soon drains from the girl's slender shoulders. Her fingers, which once were gripping the handle of a shovel tightly, relax. Her lips curve upwards at the edges. She's smiling, and what a smile it is. It is transformative. When she smiles, she looks radiant, angelic almost. Hers is a smile that's so suffused with light that your eyes begin to prickle from it. You're so relieved, you almost feel as if you could cry. It would not be the first time you have wept during the night, and neither would be too surprising if you did. You have been through a lot. You must be exhausted. The girl holding the shovel seems to realize this, because she bridges the distance between you cautiously, as one might approach a skittish cat. Then she says, in a rough voice which does not match her dainty appearance. Well, she does live in a rural village. What were you expecting? A rough voice. That's not... Oh, it's so good to see another person. I was afraid I was the only person left alive. The only one in the whole world. Now this is quite the effusive greeting. Her introductory speech is riddled with exclamation marks. She's rather more personal than her apparel would make one suggest. You, a well-bred young lady, cannot help but feel overwhelmed. It is your turn now to be on your guard. Anxiously, you observe the girl with the shovel, and you ask her what she means. What happened? Oh, do you not know? There's an awful lot you do not know. So much, in fact, would fill a whole encyclopedia. No, a whole library. You shake your head, ashamed of your ignorance, and the girl frowns. You must have been from around these parts. I guess I should have known. This village is a small one, and everyone knows everybody else. The girl's expression falls. At least they used to. Back when there were still people to know. That ain't the case now, though, not after the plague. There's a plague. That would certainly explain why the village, when you walked through it, was so quiet. Did everybody else succumb to this mysterious illness? That's right. It's just me here now. I've not seen another human being... I've not seen another human being in a long, long time. It gets so lonely here. Now that's an interesting turn of phrase. It catches inside your head like a burr. Have you heard it before? That it gets so lonely here. Title drop again. You do not have much time to ponder this, however, because the girl takes a step towards you. Oh, but where are my manners? They must have gone rusty after being on my own for so long. My apologies, miss. You look like you've come a long way. You said you were a traveler, yes? And your hands are very cold, just like ice. Would you like to come inside? Maybe something warm to eat and to drink. My home is small, I'm afraid, and my food ain't nothing fancy. Or, how I say, I can't read. I'm afraid, and my food ain't nothing fancy, but I'll be more than willing to share. I don't know, how am I supposed to read her voice? I guess she's like very casual. They said like she's like rural, right? Whatever. I don't know, whenever I think of like the way, at least in anime, you know, it's like the way characters are characterized, I guess, the way they're, I don't know what the word is, but you know, the way they're translated anyway. Anyone who's not from the city, they just sound like Southern, you know, basically. They sound like a cowboy. So I don't know, maybe like that? I'm not sure, anyway. It's not every day another girl stops by, especially not one as pretty as yourself. I'm feeling very blessed. The girl laughs, a carefree, airy sort of laugh, which does not match her initial impression of her. Yeah, to be honest, she does look like, especially the way her eyes are drawn, you know, I was like, I don't know what the word for that is. Tsureme? I don't know, something like that. Usually when you draw a character's eyes, you can't see it here because she's closing her eyes, but usually when you draw her eyes, if you draw like a very angular way, you know, like straight, usually that indicates, I don't know, that indicates like more of a serious character, you know, more of like a, in my head anyway, more like a, you know, like a character that's, no nonsense, you know, that isn't so friendly. But he's actually the opposite, apparently, according to the author. You thought when you saw her among the graves that she'd be more distant somehow, and more mysterious. Yeah, that's what I thought too, looking at her design, you know? Perhaps you're mixing her up with somebody else. You know, you're mixing her up with, like, anime tropes instead. You're still unsure if you can trust this girl, but invitation is an appealing one. It is much more appealing, certainly, than spending the night outdoors, in the cold, keeping on the graves. What are you, a romantic poet? Alas, poor Yorick. Please. You make a show of pondering the girl's invitation, at the very least, you do not want to appear too eager, but your acquiescence is, alas, an inevitability. Why would you ever refuse her? She's the first friendly face you've seen all night. Without her, you'd be all alone. Your hostess leads you to a small, humble home located by a stone's throw away from the church, built in the shadows of a twisted, towering sycamore. Sycamore. The girl's home is in such a state it seems a folly to even call it a home. Hovel would, to you, be a more appropriate descriptor. But when your hostess leads you inside, her eyes alive, she says, "Here we are, home sweet home." You don't have the heart to tell her that you don't find her home very homey or very sweet. That would be incredibly rude. And also kind of like ungrateful, you know? At least you have something, you know? You gonna find like a better home anywhere, somewhere else? As a guest, you ought to be more appreciative. Half-heartedly, you look around your newfound surroundings. The ceiling is supported by wooden joists. It is perilously low. Not so much that you're in danger of bumping your head, but just enough to feel claustrophobic. There's fire in the corner, though it's not consigned to a grate. Fire instead is blazing in the open. A circle of logs set alight like a scene from a witch's kitchen. I feel like the protagonist definitely comes from the wealthy class, you know? I mean, because there's, I guess, peasants in this world, I guess there's nobility as well. So I guess, you know, the main character is from nobility, it seems like. I don't know. But the fire hangs a silvery pot suspended from one of the wooden eaves. Other objects of interest are hung from the eaves: iron implements you take to be cooking utensils, various herbs, and strips of meat left to cure. Beef jerky. The smell of cooking fills the air, mingled with the sharp, sour scent of unwashed bodies. Nobody showers, I guess. How, you wonder, does your hostess clean herself? You know, I think it's a myth, though. You know, peasants in history have always been stereotyped as like very dirty and unclean. But they do clean themselves. I mean, especially if they live near like a lake or something, like a water source. If not, you know, they use a well, I guess, you know, and they do clean themselves. You know, people did take baths back in the day. And soap, I believe, did exist. I think it was made from, I don't know, soap is made from like butter or something? I can't remember. Maybe not. I don't know. I just think of butter when I think of soap, but that's not right. I don't know if that's correct or not. But no, they use something. And I remember they used some kind of like, you know, they didn't have shampoo back in the day, but they used, you know, bars of soap, you know. I think. Anyway. But hey, you wonder, does your hostess clean herself? You do not see a bathtub anywhere. Well, I mean, probably not like a fancy bathtub. I imagine that'd be for nobility, you know? I think peasants would just use a wash basin or something, right? Or they're just the outdoors, really. Perhaps she does not possess one. The girl's home is unremarkable in every regard, but it is, you suppose, better than nothing. At least there's a roof over your head and food to put in your belly. The girl looks at the pot suspended over the fire, where she gives a stir of a ladle. Then she brings the ladle to her lips to taste whatever concoction she's brewing within it. You can only hope that she's not like the weird sisters from that famous play, brewing a broth with penny snake fillets. I mean, I don't know, calling it snake fillets makes it sound delicious. Anyway. Yes, I think this is just about done, the girl says to nobody in particular. She sets the ladle down back into the pot and looks at you and smiles. Do you want something? Looks as though you have come quite the long way. You must be hungry. Those words are like music to your ears, even more divine than the trumpets of God's most loyal angels. You're so hungry you could eat a horse. Not that there are any horses in the immediate vicinity. You express your interest to your hostess, who smiles in response. I thought you'd like the sound of that. Just give me a few moments. The hostess retrieves 2 earthenware bowls from a cupboard with rickety hinges, into which she pours 2 hefty helpings of whatever it is she's cooking. Then, this she serves with bread, which is so hefty it could be used as a murder weapon, as a blunt object. It's not much, I'm afraid. It's only soup and bread. It should take the edge off your appetite, though. Thank your hostess for her hospitality, your stomach rumbling all the while. The soup does not look like anything you would typically consume, but the soup's poor presentation does not dissuade you. It is true enough that people eat first with their eyes, but when one is hungry enough, one becomes obliging enough to eat almost anything. You know, it's like how like water, like plain water, is the most delicious thing in the world if you're very thirsty, for example. Why else do you think that people, when stranded upon desert islands, resort to cannibalism? Funny that you mentioned that. Humans are creatures of necessity. You like to wrap yourselves up in pretensions, but in actuality, you're not much better than animals. You're so hungry, your stomach is achingly empty, that you certainly descend upon your food like an animal. Your teeth glint, your incisors gleam. Or incisors? Or is it incisors or incisors? I'm not sure. Anyway. And soon you've consumed all that your hostess has offered you. Your hostess watches you while you eat. She giggles once you have finished. Did you enjoy that? Oh. You catch your hostess's gaze, suddenly abashed. You're so hungry that you fail to account for her judgment. Now that you have some food in your belly, though, and you've been suitably warmed, your old self-consciousness is returning. Did you not make a fool out of yourself? You demur shyly, looking at your lap fearfully. Or fearful, all the while of what your hostess might think of you. You do not want her to take against you. Fortunately for you, however, and for your fragile ego, your hostess is not the judgmental sort. She's not like the girls you grew up with. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's nice to see my food being appreciated so heartily. I know I'm not the best, but I've been practicing for a long while. I used to cook for my father all the time, you see. This remark catches your attention. Quizzically, you look at your hostess, your abashment over your animalistic eating habits suspended. What happened to her father? It seems a grim thing to contemplate after having eaten, but did your hostess mention something about a plague? Yes, your hostess says, her voice soft now and serious. That's right. There was a plague. What of the villagers? What of her father? They're all gone now. Gone? Yes, you see. Your hostess rearranges herself upon her chair, one slender leg folded over the other. Then she begins her tale in earnest. My family has a history. We've lived here for centuries by the church. So as we can tend to the garden, garden? I would say garden, you know, when you say tend to the something, it's the garden anyway. So as we can tend to the graveyard. Ah, so this abode is centuries old then. It will certainly explain the dirt. My father used to prepare bodies for burial, back when he was alive. He built the coffins, he dug the graves, and he lowered the coffins into the dirt. I know it might sound like an awful job, but somebody's gotta do it. There's no sense averting our eyes from death. Not when it happens to the best of us. It's a noble profession, one that's been handed down our family for generations. My father's father was a gravedigger, and so was my father's father's father and my father's 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 fathers. Digging graves is in our blood. It's who we are. My. That was a surprisingly pretty speech, coming from a girl who lives in the countryside, a girl who's without much in the way of education. It is apparent, just to listen to her, and the way she slurs her syllables together, that she's never had any allocation lessons, not like you. Allocation? I'm gonna need some allocation lessons after reading all these, you know, prose, I guess. We call it prose, right? Prose? I don't know how to pronounce it anymore. You know, all the dialogue. Prose. Anyway, there's a determination, however, to her, and a pride in her genealogy which gives her a respectable aura. You cannot help but be impressed. So you ask your hostess, does that make her one in a long line of gravediggers? Yes, your hostess, the gravedigger, says. That's right. Though I was never supposed to be a gravedigger myself. It's not a woman's profession, that's what everybody says. My father didn't mind that, though. He taught me everything he knew, and then some. I might be a woman, but I have plenty upper body strength. Check out my sick abs. I can dig a grave just as well as my father could, without breaking a sweat. To the despair of my mother up in heaven, I'm sure. I'm sure if she were still alive, she'd rather I focus on more feminine pursuits like basket weaving or sewing, to better attract a suitor. Not that would do much good now. There's nobody around who'll court me, not for miles and miles. And what happened to her mother? She died when I was very young, during childbirth. I was only 5 years old. Oh, well. You can relate to her, at least upon this point. Your parents are not dead, at least not as far as you're aware, but you have not seen them in an awfully long time. They sent you away as soon as you were old enough, and they never once bothered to check up on you. For many years there have been no letters, nor any visits. You offer the gravedigger your condolences. You do not know if they will help, but you feel like you cannot say nothing. That would seem heartless. The gravedigger, however, does not seem too upset by this turn of events, because she smiles, albeit somberly. It's alright. It was ages ago. I don't remember her too well. I've never really had the luxury of sitting around feeling sorry for myself. I had too much work to do. Around the house, yes. That too. I was the oldest child, so it was my job, after my mother died, to manage the sweeping and the cooking. Oh, and looking after all my siblings too. You blink, intrigued, then glance about your hostess's humble lodgings. You do not see any siblings in the immediate vicinity. Where could they be? The gravedigger must have noticed your roving eyes. You're not exactly being subtle, but she shakes her head. I had siblings. 2 younger brothers. They're both gone now. Oh. You should have known. You apologize to the gravedigger for your lack of tact, but she does not seem upset by this faux pas. Oh, don't apologize. It's not your fault. My brothers weren't long for this world anyway. The youngest, he died when he was still a babe, and the oldest, he died before he reached double digits. I was upset about it at the time, of course, but I've come to terms with it. Life's a fleeting thing in this wicked old world. That's something you learn in this trade. Digging graves, I mean. I dug graves for the elderly and the infirm. I've also dug graves for young babes still in their swaddling clothes. That's the nature of death. It comes from us all in the end, no matter how old we are, no matter how much money we have, no matter how good or bad we've been. It's the greatest equalizer. Or so I've heard. A chill creeps down your spine as you listen to your hostess's speech. She's not wrong, but the inherent mortality of all humankind is not something you wish to contemplate. It is too disturbing. For the longest of times, my family was a small one. It was just my father and me, but that was fine. It was how I liked it. I was very happy, even though our lives weren't the best. I've never had any fancy clothes to wear, we can't dine in the finest of foods. But in the grand scheme of things, we ain't anything that special, but I've always felt otherwise. I thought that I was blessed. We knew hardship, of course, and famine, but that's just the way life is around here. When food supplies were low, we always helped one another out. I had my father, but I also had the rest of the village. We all looked one after another, and things always worked out in the end. At least they did. Until the plague happened. Until the plague hit. Yes, she had mentioned a plague. You've been wondering when she was going to return to that topic. You suppose that the plague is the reason that the villages you traversed are so very empty. And you'd suppose right. The plague tore through the village. I don't remember when. Feels like it was a while ago. But maybe it wasn't all that long after all. Feels like I've been my own for centuries, but... Your hostess's eyes begin to cloud over. She looks as though she's entrenched within her own memories. What else could she be remembering? Or what could she be remembering? You've never seen a plague before, though you've heard of them in your history lessons. Your history professor was quite enthusiastic about the subject. He talked about piles of dead bodies stacked up on the streets, and stacked up in the wooden carts to come to take them away with no shortage of aplomb. She was a strange woman, your history professor. She really liked talking about death. The plague came on very suddenly. There was no warning. One day everyone was fine, and the next, they were all dead. It is with no small amount of anxiety that you eye the gravedigger. Then you ask, worriedly, surely they could have not all have died. Is that not an exaggeration? Oh, if only. I wish I was exaggerating, but it's the truth, honest to God. The people in the village died, one after the other, just like that. I saw what that plague does to people firsthand. My father was one of the first people who caught it. I think one of the bodies which came through that we buried must have had it. Not that I know for certain, but I'm just guessing still. My father didn't have an easy time of it. His skin turned all grey and clammy, and he complained of a horrible fever. There were night sweats and stomach cramps. And then there were the boils. The boils. Pustules. They were the size of eggs and they were full of pus. When they burst, it stung. The whole house was full of it. Stink of death. The wise woman in the village came to see if she could be of any use, but it was no good. My father was far too gone already. She took one look at him lying on his deathbed and shook her head. She said she didn't want to get any closer. I can't say I blame her. It was a ghastly sight. I didn't appreciate it at the time, though. I felt like she was turning her back on us. I wished her ill. I remember that after she left. Until a few days passed and she fell sick too. Then I felt bad for cursing her. I couldn't help but worry it was all my fault. Silly, I know, but... The gravedigger closes her eyes. She seems to squeeze her lids together, until her lashes melt like flecks of fallen snow. The shoulders, which are very slender, are shaking. She looks as though she might at any moment fall apart. It wasn't long after that the rest of the village fell ill. They all had the same symptoms as my father, the clammy skin, and the fever and the boils. The boils grew, then they burst, and they died screaming, stinking in agony. My father died too, only 3 days after they fell ill, but I think even that was 3 days too many. I didn't want my father to die, of course. I did everything I could to help him, but it was all pointless. None of my herbal salves had any impact. I couldn't make a blind bit of difference. All I did was stand by his bedside, tell him it'd be alright, until his eyes sank into his skull like 2 black stones and his mouth dried out. During that last day before he died, he might have been a corpse already. He didn't look at me. He didn't speak to me. He just lay in his bed with his eyes closed, groaning. I never wished any ill of my father before, but during those moments The gravedigger squeezes her hands, which are resting upon her black-clad lap into fists. She trembles. Then, in a voice throbbing with emotion, she says, I wish he just died. Based on her anecdote, it does not sound like she had an overly long wait. I wonder if she would consider that a silver lining. No, perhaps not. The gravedigger is still the gravedigger is still graving. No, the gravedigger is still shaking. She will not cry, will she? You hope not, because that would be cringe. No, Awkwardly, you look at the gravedigger. You're not sure how to soothe her, but you know you must make some sort of effort, even if it's a token one. You shift upon your chair, which feels very cold and hard beneath your thighs. Then you say very softly that you are sorry. It's not much, but it is all you can think of saying. You had thought initially that your situation was comparable to that of the gravedigger, but now you can see that is not the case. Her suffering has far outstripped your own. Not the suffering is a competition, of course. Her apology feels inadequate to your ears, largely because it is, but the gravedigger seems not to mind it. She's very big-hearted, that girl, to smile at you so, no matter how foolish she might be. Do you really deserve such kindness? Oh, again with apologies. It's alright, like I said, you didn't cause any of this. I'm not upset at you, I'm just recounting what happened is all. I do wonder, though, why I never felt sick myself. I thought I was going to die, so I already prepared for the Reaper to come and take me away. But maybe he wasn't interested. I was just too cute, I guess. He's just too cute to be killed off. Maybe he already satiated his appetite on all the others. That, or maybe he thought he'd have to leave me alive for practicality's sake, you know, because someone's got to dig those graves. With my father gone, who else would tend to the dead? I was the only person left by the end of it all. So I had to bury the people in the village. They're all resting peacefully now, under the earth, where the plague can't reach them. On the one hand, I'm happy for them. They're able to escape from all their suffering. When I think about all the people I've lost, though, the gravedigger tenses, and she sniffs. When I think about the kindly washwoman who helped me scrub the mud and dirt from my clothes. Aha! So this village did have a fair share of washwomen after all. It would seem your early assistance upon this particular point was not when I'm married. Okay, well, it was this weird, like, you know, this weird, like, what's the word? I don't know what the word for this is, but like, you know, insert, you know? Anyway. Interjection, yeah. It was this weird interjection. And the handsome young farmhands who used to flirt with me. The priest who preached the church.
Yorokobe.
Who told us wonderful tales of paradise. And the children who would skip stones in the lake and play hopscotch in the streets. I can't help but feel so lonely. The gravedigger's eyes begin to shine. When she has finished her address, or rather, when she finished her address, with tears, but she does not let them fall. She's being very brave, much more so than you are. Anxiously, you extend a hand towards her, meaning to... What? Give her a hug. You do not know her well enough. Pat her head? That's just a, anime cliche. That would be infantilizing. Squeeze her hand? Perhaps that could be misconstrued as a romantic overture, and that's the last thing you want. Maybe, or do you? I don't know. You endured more than your fair share of teasing over that. You sit there for a few moments, paralyzed by indecision, as the gravedigger poorly suppresses her sniffles. In the end, you let your arm drop back to your side. Your hand rests upon your lap, as useful as damp kindling. You do not know what to do with it. You do know that you ought to say something, though, to show that you heard her plight and that you care. You do not know what this something should be, however. No words could ever console the gravedigger. They would never be enough. It can offer some balm, however, to the bereaved, and so, after a pause just long enough to be awkward, you offer your condolences. What else can you say? Oh no, the gravedigger replies, wiping a few stray tears away from the back of her arm. It's alright. I've grown used to it, really. Being on my own, I mean. You ain't so bad, really. And I'm not alone now, at least. I've met you. You'll keep me company, won't you? Well, what can you say to that? You're uncallous enough to trample this poor girl's hopes, are you? You know full well yourself how awful that feels. You do nothing but nod, a response which makes the girl smile more widely still. Oh, that's wonderful. I know you're just a traveler who's passing through, but I can offer you bread and board until you leave. I have food enough and a spare bedroom. I can make it up for you right now. You must be tired after your long journey. Just give me a moment. The gravedigger rises to her feet in a flurry of excitement, then retreats. You watch as she departs, a little too eager to please and frown. The girl's home is a small, humble one, with a low ceiling and slanted walls. You cannot imagine such a small dwelling possessing a spare bedroom. This so-called spare bedroom is in all likelihood the room her father slept in before the plague carried him off. You do not think you would like to spend the night in the room of a dead man, but what choice do you have? You're tired, wretchedly so. You know, I wonder what this plague is. Isn't this the infamous bubonic plague or whatever? How do you say it? Bubonic? Bubonic. I don't know how to pronounce anything, to be honest. Bubonic? Bubonic. The bubonic plague, right? That's the infamous, Black Death plague. That's always... that you always see in, in stories, because, obviously it happened in real life, but... oops, I didn't mean to. Yeah. Why? It is all you can do to keep your eyes open. While you were running through the forest, desperate to escape your pursuer, you had no thought in mind beyond finding some safe sanctuary in which you could recuperate. Now that you found said sanctuary, it would be unreasonable to find fault with it. You have to live more thankful for what you have. There are many, many people in the world of less. You rise and follow the gravedigger. When she has finished her preparations to her so-called spare bedroom, which is every bit as cramped as you feared it would be. At least there is a bed, which comes as something of a relief. The rest of those lodgings are so humble, you are half expecting a straw pallet. As tired as you might be, you cannot lie to yourself. You have no desire to sleep among the hay like an animal. The sheets of the bed are clean, too, a fact you discern of a cursory glance. So you'll not be expected to sleep upon the sweat-soaked linen of a plague-ridden man after all. This really is your lucky day. I got you this too, the gravedigger says, somewhat shyly, as she hands you a folded gown, to sleep in. I thought it might come in handy. Your own clothes are, a little shabby. You say that again. Your skirt is covered in mud, and the hem is torn and ragged. The nightgowns are my old ones, so it suffered a bit of wear and tear, but I hope it'll fit alright. It's clean if nothing else. You accept the nightgown from your benefactress with words of thanks. You want to sound appropriately appreciative, but you cannot master your fatigue. Weariness overcomes you, and you yawn, a fact that the gravedigger does not fail to notice. Oh, begging your pardon. I don't want to keep you. I'll be making myself scarce. If you need anything, though, don't hesitate to ask. I'll be happy to help. The gravedigger bows her head to you like a drudge, then hurries off, closing the door behind her with a thud. Tired though you are, you soon find that you rather miss your hostess's company. In the face of her good-natured smiles, you could almost forget all the hardships you had hitherto endured. In her absence, however, your lodgings feel almost unbearably cold and inhospitable. Inhospitable. You suppress a shudder, then unclothe yourself. You work as quickly as you're able, but your fingers are cold and they fumble the buttons of your blouse. It takes you more time than you would like to complete this endeavor, but you soon have your shirt and skirt dispensed with. You're too tired to fold them neatly, so you're not bothered to fold them at all. Instead, you cast them carelessly upon the floor as defiant as a sulky child and pull on your new nightgown. Your hostess's early warnings were apt enough. It is quite warm, but it fits well enough. It's more comfortable, at least, in your old uniform. You have endured worse. Newly dressed and ready for bed, you loosen your hair from your braids and settle down among the sheets. It is with a sigh you extinguish the weakly flickering candlelight which burns on your bedside, and with another sigh that you lay down your head upon the pillow. Though physically exhausted, you have to wonder whether you will be able to sleep at all. You can recall your previous dash through the forest in such vivid detail, your heart is still pounding. That fear has yet to leave you. Perhaps it will never leave you. Your terror was such, it almost feels as though it would suffuse itself into your bones, into your very being. Your exhaustion is greater than your worldly anxieties, and soon it claims you. Your eyelids fall shut and your breathing, inevitably, begins to even out. It's not long until you are spiraling through the dark, deep abyss, long in Morpheus's kingdom. But your sleep, despite your weary state, is not restorative as you had hoped. Your imagination has always been overactive. Even at the conservatoire, you are frequently beset by dreams of the most vivid nature. The dreams I have this night, lying beneath unfamiliar sheets upon an unfamiliar bed, are no less intense than usual. In your dreams, you're back at the conservatoire, the place where this adventure of yours began. You're wearing the crisp white blouse you once discarded, and your gray, unremarkable skirt. Your hair is tied in braids and your eyes are downturned, forever focused upon your feet. You tried not to look at your classmates, so you thought yourself fortunate if they did not look at you in return. You do not want anybody to notice you. Until that awful winter, that is, where everybody stopped paying attention to you for good. Nobody tried to trip you when you walked past them in the hallways. Nobody, in fact, so much as glanced at you. All of a sudden, there are no malicious whispers, no wicked laughter, no pulled hair, and no thrown objects. You're giddy with relief at first over this newfound means of tormenting you that your classmates had devised. This little game, that of complete and utter disregard, continued on and on and on and on, as the days grew shorter and the nights grew longer. As the time passed, you began to fret at the state of your own corporeality. Could anybody still see you? Did you even exist at all? And at long last you found it, quite by accident, the source of all your woes. One of the girls had erected it in the forest through which you were sometimes bidden to jog for PE class, beneath the shade cast by an old oak tree. PE class. I don't know. That's for some reason that feels so modern. You know, did people in the medieval ages have PE class? I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's medieval necessarily. You know, like probably more modern than medieval, but less modern than modern times, if that makes sense. Anyway, it was a makeshift tombstone, a small, meager monument made of stone, upon which one of your classmates had hewn a name. Your name. You knew at once as you stood there, standing beneath the shade of that ancient tree, that this was the reason behind your classmates' silence. This is why they had for many months been ignoring you so assiduously. They had buried you. In their hearts, you had already died. Okay, is that the idea? I don't know. Maybe it's meant to be like a prank, but then it created some weird rumors, and then people were avoiding her because they were afraid of being cursed or something. I don't know. Either way, I guess she was being bullied, you know, at her school apparently. I don't know, or like her nobility school. Is that how it works? To like, I don't know. Again, it's like I'm not sure of the setting exactly. I mean, there's nobility, there's peasants, there's like supernatural, mythical creatures that usually exist in medieval times and whatnot. I just wonder, like, you know, like if you're like a noble, don't you usually just get like how do you say homeschooled? You know, like schools back then didn't really exist as far as I know. You know, well maybe I don't know, not sure. Well, I guess they mentioned a conservatoire, I guess, and academies, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know if they exist in the same way, rather, as it does in modern times. I don't know. Anyway, your eerie dreams notwithstanding, you sleep more comfortably than you anticipated. When you wake the following morning to the sweet chirping of the birdsong, you feel well rested, albeit woozy. Your head is aching. It is nothing, however, that a cup of hot tea cannot fix. Hot tea. It makes me feel this is like very, this is very like British, I don't know. This is like, again, so, it's like a big ambiguous medieval fantasy setting, and that does take a lot of European inspiration. Anyway, you stumble into the kitchen in your nightclothes, your hair loose and your feet bare, and the gravedigger turns to you. She looks at your face, which is pasty, and your under eyes, which are dark, and exclaims, in the manner of one accustomed to solving problems, not complaining about them. Oh, you look awful. I think you need something warm to drink, and maybe you need something to eat too. Let me get started on breakfast. And that's exactly what she does. She gets started on breakfast, which proves to be quite the simple affair. Nothing like the luxurious food you're accustomed to in your past life. The bread is hard enough to break your teeth on, the cheese is a bit too strong. Where did she get all this food? I mean, I guess she saved them, but, she's only one person, I don't know if she needs to, like, farm, because you're gonna have to farm, and there's like one person just farming, that's a lot of work. Especially back in the day when there's not a lot of, like, machines or anything like that, It is food all the same, though, and you do not complain. Your stomach was beginning to grumble. The tea is inoffensive, at least, and you drink it gratefully. You thank the gravedigger girl for her hospitality, as she smiles at you in return. A sunny smile, like a field of blooming bellflowers. It's no problem. Don't hesitate to ask me if you need anything else, she says, words which come to symbolize your relationship. You stay with the gravedigger for many, many more days, and limited though her means might be, she always tries to help you. The gravedigger says to you chores about the house to keep you occupied, a fact which you are grateful. You need to do something to keep your mind off your frantic flight through the forest. You can almost forget about it now during the day. During the night, however, it returns to you. The sound of your feet against the foliage and the swirling fog. When you sleep, you are assailed by nightmares. Sometimes you awake after midnight. The sheets twist around your body, and your mouth gaping open in a paroxysm of terror.
Paroxysm.
Oh, here you go. Paroxysm. Oh, it was just loading. Paroxysm. Paroxysm. A sudden attack or violent expression of particular emotion or activity. Your mouth gaping open in a paroxysm of terror. Though you try to tell yourself otherwise, you're still afraid. Being with the gravedigger makes you feel less so, though, particularly when you're sweeping the floor keeping an eye on the bread loaves so they do not burn. You attend to most of the domestic chores, while the gravedigger concerns herself with the work she knows best, that is, digging graves. Her dogged persistence when it comes to this pursuit intrigues you, so much so they cannot help but posit a question to her one particular morning with the skies festooned with clouds. Yeah, well, why is there more bodies, to put in this graveyard? I don't know. I mean, there's at least one more, but, Why, you ask, perhaps a touch insensitively, do you continue to dig graves? There's nobody left, after all, to dig them for. You have always been practical, you cannot see the point in it. What's the point in it, The gravedigger ponders, while holding her precious shovel to her chest. Fortunately, she does not seem upset by your question, despite its bluntness. You should count yourself lucky her temperament is so very placid. I don't suppose there's any point to it, really, the gravedigger eventually says with a small smile. I know it doesn't have any practical purpose, but, well, digging graves is what my father did. He showed me how to do it so I could continue his legacy. My father wanted to keep our family tradition going. And I suppose I wanted to do the same. That's all there is to it, really. That's all, is it? You think you can understand that? Though your companion's actions might appear to be illogical, there's a cardinal reason nestled amongst them. She does not dig graves out of any sense of purpose. She does it instead out of sentiment. Besides, I have to do something to keep myself busy, don't I? If I spend my days idling all on my own, I think I'll go mad. If she didn't already go mad, but don't worry about it. The gravedigger laughs at this, as though the prospect of her own madness is amusing. The laugh, despite her slender stature, is not particularly delicate. It reminds you, perhaps unkindly, of the braying of a horse. You're ashamed of thinking such a thing, though, and your face flushes with the guilt of it. We cannot all be well-bred young ladies, you know. Still, the laughter of the gravedigger, as it echoes with the gray, gloomy sky, is strangely desperate. It sounds forced. It sounds like, it sounds like the laughter that Tidus had, in Final Fantasy X. What was it? It's Final Fantasy X, right? With Tidus, he goes, ha ha ha, ha ha ha, like a seagull. Anyway, her smile too is a touch unnatural, the rictus grin of a corpse. You find, despite your attempts to return her laughter with a polite giggle, that you cannot. You cannot help but pity her. You retreat indoors briefly after your talk with the gravedigger, then set about some simple chores. The gravedigger trusts you well enough to manage sweeping the floor, a task which does not take particularly long, and the preparing of the meals, a task which takes slightly long. It's not until much later, however, once the sun has already sunk beneath the horizon and the moon is high in the sky, that the gravedigger returns from the outdoors. She is windswept after many hours spent exposed to the elements, and there is dirt caked beneath her fingernails. The gravedigger removes her cloak, which she hangs by the door, and looks at the pot suspended over the fire, a fire which you stoke with your own fair hands. The scent of cooking food, that of garlic and onions, fills the air, diffusing the interior of the kitchen in a homey aroma which makes your stomach rumble. Taking stock of this, the gravedigger smiles at you, a toothy smile which, despite her status as a lowly peasant, is surprisingly clean and bright and white. I think I've looked that up, because toothpaste didn't exist back then. But people use they did use some kind of chewing stick, I think, maybe, was it, back in the day, to clean their teeth, something like that. But I don't know, like toothpaste existed back then. At least in the form that we have now, like in an actual tube. No, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe they use some other thing, but I'm not sure. Anyway, thank you so much, dear one. It's not like returning home after a hard day's work to find dinner already prepared. Now let me give you a test. The gravedigger The gravedigger dips a soup in, I can't speak. The gravedigger dips a spoon into the soup, then brings it to her lips. She blows upon it. Then she places the spoon to her mouth, the wooden utensil clacking against her teeth. You observe this with a touch of anxiety. Will she like the food which you have prepared for her? You have cooked for her before, in the past, and she was always very complimentary of your efforts. Cooking is not your forte, however. You never had to concern yourself with it, really, growing up in a relative comfort as you did. You think that you enjoy this rural, rustic mode of existence more than you did any of the privileges of your past life. At least now, with the gravedigger, you have a steadfast friend, a staunch ally. When you're with her, you're not alone, and that is worth its weight in gold. The gravedigger exclaims, after drawing the spoon from her lips, her smile a bright, guileless one. It's delicious. Your face flushes at this compliment. You're unaccustomed to receiving them, and it makes you feel good. Shyly, you ask the gravedigger if she truly means that, a query which makes the gravedigger smile. Of course I mean it. You become quite good at cooking, really. That's a relief. You're not very good at all of this cooking malarkey in the beginning. You don't know how to handle a knife, or how to peel a vegetable, and you cut yourself more than once. You bled into the soup on several occasions, it adds to the flavor. Now, never once did you throw this sullied soup out. The gravedigger lives a humble existence, and she cannot afford to waste her precious ingredients. Your soups, during your stay, have all been seasoned with the slightest hint of iron. Today's soup, however, is a marked step above all the rest. You did not cut yourself the knife even once. It's not like a bad thing. It's just like eating the blood, accidentally drinking blood of another person. That's how you transmit diseases. Anyway, maybe your companion's compliments are not empty fluff. Maybe you really are improving. This soup should be ready to serve. I have some bread too that we can eat with. I should brew some tea too. Let me. Ah yes, the tea. You knew that you were forgetting something. You're so focused on the soup it must have slipped your mind. Your face flushes yet again at this oversight, and shyly you offer to correct this oversight. The gravedigger, however, waves your request aside. No, it's alright. You made the dinner, so I'll brew the tea. It's only fair, and it won't take all that long. Would you mind serving up the soup while I'm busy? Of course you would not mind. You do enjoy making yourself useful. For a lady, you are awfully domestic. Work alongside the gravedigger to finish your nightly meal, and together you serve it. Soup and bread alongside 2 cups of piping hot tea, prepared by your hostess's own 2 hands. You sit together at the table, then partake in a simple fare, after saying grace. You know, how did they make... I don't know. I'm actually very ignorant about tea. You know, all I know about tea is that, for like the... You know how like the British, you know, are infamous, or it's infamous, but you know, they're famous for their tea, right? They love tea and everything, right? It's a very English thing to do, drink tea. But it was originally imported, right? It was imported from, I think, a different country. I can't remember which country it was, though. It was either China or India, something like that. You know, a lot of the things that are like British staples are actually imported, as far as I remember. So I wonder, you know, how did they get, like, I guess, tea leaves, you know? They just find it outside? I don't know, I'm not sure how that works. I know that spices, for example, were very rare in Europe. Naturally, anyway. So that's why they had to import it. Anyway. You sit together at the table and partake in a simple fare after saying grace. The soup really is quite good, despite it being made from only the most commonplace of ingredients. There's a bit of a kick to it, and it warms you from the inside out. The tea, meanwhile, is very soothing, so much so it makes you feel rather sleepy. You like to sit with the gravedigger for a little while longer and tell stories, as you have sometimes in the past, that or play cards. The nights are long, and so there's no better way to pass them than spending time with her. Games of old maid, alas, will have to wait. You're too tired for it. You do not know what has happened, but after consuming your victuals, you feel utterly fatigued. You explain your predicament to the gravedigger between your yawns as she nods in response. Oh, that's alright. You don't need to stay up with me, not if you ain't up to it. You should head off to bed and rest that pretty head of yours. You do not think you are particularly pretty, but you presume that the gravedigger is just regurgitating a phrase to you. She does not truly mean it. How could she? She's not gay. I mean, I don't know. Maybe she's bisexual. She did mention something about like, you know, handsome farm boys or whatever. What was it? I can't remember now. Anyway, she's far prettier than you are. You thank the gravedigger for her understanding, then rise from the table. You retreat to the spare bedroom on trembling legs and change out your clothes. You've only just slid into your nightgown when you hear the rapping of knuckles upon your door, light and unobtrusive. This rapping could, of course, belong to but one person. Is the gravedigger come to check up on you? I'm sorry, the gravedigger says, her soft voice, but you rushed to your room so soon after eating, I couldn't help but worry about you. Would you mind if I take a look at you? I just want to see if you're alright, you know, if you're not freaking like, you know, somehow caught the plague, you know, and resurfaces her PTSD from like everyone she knew dying from this mysterious disease. But anyway, the gravedigger is trying to keep her voice steady, but you can hear it wavering regardless. She really does sound concerned, so much so she could very well be on the brink of tears. You do not want her to cry for you. You feel horribly guilty if you upset her, even inadvertently, given all that she's done for you. You bid the gravedigger entry to your room, therefore, without further delay, an invitation she hastens to take. The door swings inwards with a creak, and there your hostess stands, still attired in black, her clothes a stark contrast to your pure white, well, off-white nightgown. Or actually, stark contrast? I think it's supposed to be contrast, I think that's a typo, you know, as far as I can tell. Gravedigger looks at you, seated in bed with your hair free from her usual braids and excels. Is that relief, you wonder, playing about her face? But why? What was she expecting to see exactly before entering your bedchamber? Oh, thank you for letting me in, the gravedigger says, toying her fingers. How do you feel? Not too terrible, you reassure her. There's no particular problems with your health, you just feel tired. Are you sure you're not sick? Your face does look a bit pale. There'll be nothing out of the norm, you're always pale. True. Now, is there anything I can do for you? Would you like something warm to drink? Or maybe a hot brick to place in your bed? It should keep you warm. Hot brick? I guess it'd be the equivalent of like getting a brick from the fireplace, I guess, or something like that. Be the equivalent of like what do you call it? That like a hot water thing. What's it called? Like a hot water bag? I forget what those are called exactly. But the ones that you fill with like hot water. You use it to warm up. Anyway, you appreciate your hostess's thoughtfulness, but you reassure her this won't be necessary. You'll be fine. I hope so. I thought that about my father too before the gravedigger begins, but her voice soon trails off. She does not finish her thought. She does not need to. You know now that what she was thinking of before she entered your bedroom. Cold, clammy skin, a sweating brow, rank, oozing pustules. You think upon these symptoms, which are eerily similar to those recounted during the Great Plague, which once beset your own country, and you shudder. If you don't want anything, then I'll be on my way, the gravedigger says, but before that, this was just a fancy on my part, but I was wondering, would you mind if I brush your hair for a little while? Your hair? That's right, it's such a pretty shade of red is all. I just thought, well, it's just a fancy, really. You don't have to let me, not if you don't want to, but I thought it might help you relax if you're feeling under the weather. I've heard it's supposed to be soothing. That's what the gravedigger says, but you have the distinct feeling that she's the one looking for solace here. She's not quite so selfless, perhaps, as you would like to think. Perhaps, but she has been so very good to you, has done so very much for you, that you don't want to begrudge her this small self-indulgence. You rather think she deserves it. You agree therefore to a request, and upon doing so, you're certain you have made the right choice. Your hostess's face lights up immediately, in a manner which makes you blush. Oh, thank you, it'd be my honor. Now let me fetch my brush. The gravedigger retreats from your room in a hurry, but returns soon thereafter, holding in her right hand the promised brush. The one brush to rule them all. Now, this artifact acquired, the gravedigger then settles herself upon your bed, by your side. She looks at your hair for a few moments, her expression pensive. Then she announces that she'll begin. This very intimate act of brushing your hair. I don't know. I guess, it's a very, girl thing to do, I guess. I don't know. The gravedigger leans in. The wooden frame of the bed creaks under her weight, the creak which melts from the sighing of the breeze outdoors. You feel the bristles of the brush running through your hair. It is soothing enough, so much so it makes you shiver. The sensation is a pleasant one and somewhat nostalgic. Did your mother do this for you, you wonder, when you were a little girl? If she did, it must have been when you were a very little girl. You have not seen your mother in quite some time, not after you enrolled at that conservatoire. Oh yes, you have such lovely hair, dear one. It's soft, just like silk, not at all like mine. Mine is so coarse. This gentle voice draws you out of your vague, half-formed reminiscences. Or reminiscences? It sounds as though the gravedigger is lost in nostalgia of her own, because her voice when she next speaks is dreamy. I think my mother used to brush my hair like this for me, back when she was still alive. That must have been a long time ago, though. It's funny, you think, as the bristles of the brush continue to slide through your tresses, that you and the gravedigger should both be reminiscing in tandem about your respective mothers. You both have mommy issues. What now? Perhaps there is something maternal in the act of brushing one's hair, which is wont to summoning forth such images. I would not know, personally. I cannot remember my own mother at all. The narrator, by the way, saying that. I don't think I liked having my hair brushed very much, the gravedigger continues, her breath warm against the exposed nape of your neck. My mother used to complain that I squirmed too much. I can remember that. She always told me to sit still, though it wasn't my fault I squirmed. She used too much force. Now this is curious. It sounds as though the reminiscences of the gravedigger are not particularly fond after all. Did she not get along with her mother? I can't rightly say, the gravedigger replies, in a somber sort of voice. I was young, like I said, when she died. I really don't remember her too well. But I don't think she ever had that much time for me. She was too busy with all the cooking and the cleaning, and looking after my baby brothers. But she had time enough despite that to brush her hair. She did what she felt she had to make me look presentable. Not that it really worked. I wasn't like the other girls in the village, you see. I like to sit indoors with their mothers, and so I've always loved the outdoors, a bit of a tomboy. Tomboy GF. That face when you'll never have a, grave digger tomboy GF that, is has to like, that you help, heal from the tragedy of losing all that she loved in this village and like, live with her and like cook her meals. Anyway, my father said I inherited that from him. Ruefully, the gravedigger smiled. Not that you can see with your back facing her. My mother said I wasn't very, maidenly. She didn't like that I always traipse, I always traipse around outside after my father, watching as he dug graves. She said it was inappropriate, like I was some sort of princess, wearing a fine dress. That's funny because, our protagonist here is supposed to be a princess, I think. The gravedigger snorts. I used to get a bit muddy, yes, and maybe I did get burrs in my clothes and knots in my hair, but it shouldn't have mattered. It's not like I ever had any hopes of marrying a prince, no matter what my mother said. But still, she hoped. She had a lot of hopes, my mother, high hopes. I think she might have resented my father, maybe, for working such a menial job. My profession is an honest one, but it's never made much money. I think my mother was hoping to find jewels and dresses and, I don't know. She always had ideas. Her head was full of fairy tales. It was a shame, I suppose, that her reality didn't match up to what she wanted. I didn't match up to what she wanted. The bitterness in your friend's voice is unmistakable. So much so you want to console her. What would you say to her, though? You never met your companion's mother. You never will, either. Her cold, inert body has been lying in the graveyard, buried beneath her tombstone for over a decade. You have no way of ascertaining whether your companion's mother truly cared for her. You do have intelligence enough, however, to understand that poorly thought out condolences can cause more harm than good. You would not like it if people tried to reassure you that of course your father loved you really. If he loved you, then why did he send you away from home? Why did he never send you any letters? You know he's worried about his finances, but that seems a poor excuse to pretend that his only daughter did not exist. As for your mother, meanwhile, she was nice, at least you think she was, but she was woefully ineffectual. Though she was nominally an adult, she always cleaved before your father's judgment. You think that she was afraid of him. Do not try to tell the gravedigger, therefore, that her mother loved her, that she must have done, else, that her mother loved her, that she must have done, else she would not have given birth to her. Instead, you sit there, letting the brush run through your hair, and you say quietly that you understand. Sometimes, you feel like a disappointment yourself. Well, the gravedigger says after a pause, I'm glad I'm not the only one. I guess it happens to all of us. You guess so. Parents are only people, after all. While one could hope one's parents could be kind and attentive, they too can fall victim to caprices of their own. Just because one has brought a child into this world does not mean one will be able to take care of it properly. Not all parents are responsible, just as not all people are responsible. It is a painful subject. Oh well, it's alright if my mother never liked me, or even if she never loved me. I know my father did and all that, and that's all that matters. He was always there for me no matter what. Your companion's voice catches in her throat. He winces. At least until he wasn't. He died, and I didn't do a thing to help him. Your companion's shoulders are beginning to shake. You still cannot see her, but you can feel her body convulsing. You sense her loneliness rolling off her in waves. It's an all-consuming, like the waters of a deep, dark ocean. Grief anew pierces your heart, not on your behalf, but for the sake of your benefactress. She does not deserve to suffer so much. This you have no qualms of telling her. You turn to face her and pluck the brush, which has been hovering in the air, inert from her fingers. Then you let her know that her father's death was not her fault. What else could she have done? She could not have cured his illness. I know, but I can't help but think, what if I keep racking my head over and over trying to come up with something. But I can't think of anything. And even if I could, it's too late. He's already dead. He's dead and buried. I buried him, and now I'm all alone. She might have been alone, but you tell the gravedigger, but she isn't now, not anymore. How can she be when you're there? I know, and I'm grateful, but I don't know if I deserve it. Why would she not deserve your company? You not understand. Because I couldn't do nothing for nobody. My father always looked out for me when I was a little girl, But when he needed me the most, I failed him. I failed everyone. All of the villagers, all of my friends, all died. What would I do if the same thing happened to you? I don't think I could bear it. I don't want you getting sick too. Not when I care about you so much. I thought I got used to being on my own, but now that you're here, it's making me worry all over again. I've been worrying so much I can't sleep from it. I'm scared. Your companion's voice catches in her throat. Then she collapses in on herself. She leans forward, her arms wound about her middle, as if to steady herself as she cries. She cries and she cries and she cries. What a wuss. I mean, no. For a few moments you look at the gravedigger, unsure what to do. Her pale face, streaked with silvery tears, seemed to flicker in the candlelight. The shoulders, which seemed too slender to bear the accumulative weight of all the sorrow she endured, were shaking. Your fatigue continues to cling to you, as insistent as the fog which rolls amongst the tombstones in the graveyard at night. You're not so very tired, however, you cannot offer your hostess some comfort. You don't know what you can say to console her. You feel too wary to think of pretty sophisms. But there is something you can think of. You'd not typically be so bold, of course, but you're tired enough for once to throw caution to the wind. That and the tears the gravedigger are awfully arresting. Okay, it's just a hug. I thought I was expecting like a smooch, but anyway. You open your arms, and before the gravedigger can pass comment, you pull her to your chest. Oh. A soft exclamation escapes the lips of the gravedigger, quieter than the sound of wintry snow as it brushes the ground. Then there's nothing. The gravedigger is stiff in your arms for a few moments, like the corpses she and her father used to steal away inside their wooden coffins. She's all wide eyes and awkward, pointed elbows, tears still coursing down her pale cheeks. You worry briefly as you hold her that you've perhaps made a mistake. Your attempts at consoling her too clumsy? You would not know, you've never been in a situation like this before. You have never consoled any friends before because you have never had any friends to console. It is not so now, however. You are as far away from your old life as possible to be, and the gravedigger does not curse you for your impudence. What is imagine is like, how dare you hug me? And then she slaps you in the face. Neither does she try to squirm away from you. Instead, she sits there, still as a statue, cradled in your arms. Oh, I'm very sorry to show you something so embarrassing. It just gets so lonely sometimes. And so at long last, with a breathy sob, she lets the full weight of her body fall against yours. You run your hands against your sobbing companion's shoulder, blades in her back, and gently you soothe her. You tell her she does not need to apologize. There's no shame in crying. You hug her for many, many minutes while she sobs against your chest, wetting her from your nightgown. No further words pass between you that night, but they do not need to. Words are irrelevant in a moment as tender as this, shared between two souls who have come to understand one another through mutual loneliness. This is nice and all, but like, when does something horrible happens? This is what I'm always expecting. Something. Remember, this is a horror game. Remember that, the last round, how that ended? Anyway, I don't know what's gonna happen. You slide beneath her sheets. You still feel exhausted, and the gravedigger joins you without asking for permission. Oh, okay, it's getting spicy. It'd be an unnecessary piece of politeness, really, given your acceptance is all but assured. You already accepted the gravedigger after all, every single inch of her. You have accepted her hospitality. You have accepted her food, and now you're accepting her company. And you're accepting a little bit more. You raise yourself beneath the sheets and draw her body to yours. The gravedigger has not yet changed her nightwear. Clothes will be horribly rumpled when she awakes come the following morning, her head resting against your chest. But tomorrow has ceased to matter. It no longer exists. There's no concept of time between the two of you. No thought of the day which will dawn once this night inevitably ends. Instead, there's only the warmth shared between you and the wetness on the cheeks of the gravedigger. There's a sound, irregular now, and less intense than before, of your companion's muted and muffled sobs. There's a gentle, tender moment, snatched in the midst of a deep, dark night, which can never be replaced. Your eyelids feel heavy, as though weighted down with stones. They droop inexorably downwards, pulling you like a drowning maiden into the dark, impenetrable abyss of slumber. You yawn, then you fall asleep, cozied up beside the gravedigger like two cats in a basket. You sleep, and you sleep, and you sleep, more deeply than you have allowed yourself in quite some time. They just cuddle, that's all, don't worry about it. This is like the, rated teen version, I guess, where they just simply cuddled in bed. That's all. That's what people mean when they say they sleep together. They just simply cuddled. No, but when you awake, you find that you're no longer in the bed upon which you slept in, shrouded by sheets. Oh, hello, XM. By the way, horror time? Oh, maybe. The Gravedigger, too, is nowhere to be seen. Instead, you're quite alone, lying by yourself in the dark. You blink, but your surroundings do not become any clearer. Is it the middle of the night? Perhaps you are aroused from your slumber by the desire to relieve yourself, or else to slake your thirst. Your sleep has been awfully disordered as of late, and the smallest of noises have been enough to disturb you. That does not sound quite right, though. You slept well, of that you are certain. Your body feels invigorated, as though it has slept for hours and hours. How many hours? You do not know. You don't know how much of anything. Or you do not know, you don't know much of anything. You feel a strange pinching sensation around your chest, however, and around your arms. It would appear as though somebody, but who else could it have been save the Gravedigger, changed your towel while you were sleeping. Okay. Yeah, we changed it back to your uniform. That's a startling thought, but the darkness which entombs you is even more so. The darkness which surrounds you is unsteadily complete. It is so thick you cannot penetrate it. Your newfound woes do not stop, however, at this deep, unnatural darkness. It is cold, too, when you're lying upon something hard, some sort of stone slab. What is going on? You reach out, but your movements are soon stymied. Stymied? There's something heavy lying atop you, something that's limiting your movements. You were anxious before, upon awaking, but at the discovery, you feel downright aggrieved. A sharp prong of panic pierces you, but you try to suppress it. Hysterics will get you nowhere. In most cases, they only tend to make bad situations even worse. You had to know that already. You swallow your mounting dread as best you can, though it's coming on thick and fast, and try to squirm. You move your arms outwards, but do not get very far. There's a wall above you, and walls on either side of you, walls which do not budge no matter how hard you push. Not, I must add, that you can push particularly hard, your anxious state notwithstanding. You had never had much in the way of upper body strength nor lower body strength. You don't have much in the way of strength at all. You feel quite helpless as you lie there, out of breath from your meager exertions, unsure of what to do. You can hardly see a foot in front of your face. You don't know where you are nor why, but a terrible premonition is beginning to bear down upon you, one which initially you tried to discard. You do not want to accept it as a possibility, but where else could the truth lie? You're lying in a box, hemmed in by walls which offer only a scant few inches for you to stretch in any direction. I'm assuming we're being buried alive, and that's definitely a terrifying concept. Well, what will you do? I guess you eventually maybe suffocate. Maybe if it was sealed. If it wasn't sealed, then you would just simply starve to death. And that's a horrible way to go. Where else could you be but a coffin? The moment you allow yourself to ponder this awful reality is the moment you hear it, the irregular sound of drumming. As though somebody, though they must be a very large somebody, is tapping their fingertips upon the lid of your coffin. That, or it's raining. It is not the fingers of a giantess, though, which is disturbing you, nor is it the falling rain. It is dirt. The sound continues on and on, as though it's drilling its way inside your skull. It is relentless. It is merciless. Like the ticking of a great celestial clock, it cannot be stopped. Your time is almost running out. But you knew that already, didn't you? When you were running through the forest? You ought to have known, silly thing, that you could not outpace your destiny forever. Sooner or later, it would catch up with you. You're stubborn, though, and you do not want to accept this. Not content to simply lie there, you cry out. You cry out not for your parents, whom you hardly knew, nor for your school friends, for you never had any. Instead, you cry out for your new companion, the girl with whom you have been living, with whom you shared one precious, cherished moment. You cry out for the Gravedigger. Surely this is some manner of mistake. Once you realize that you're in fact entombed of the coffin she is currently filling, or who else will be moving the dirt above you, she will cease her operations at once. She will pull you out of the darkness back into the world of living, and then she will hold you close. She will embrace you. She did not mean to cause you any harm, not when she was so good to you and so kind. Why will she bury you? You cry to her so loudly you feel your vocal cords might tear, all while banging against the roof of your compact prison. You cry desperately, helplessly, and to your relief your cries do not fall upon deaf ears. The sound of falling soil stops, albeit briefly. Then you hear a voice. The voice is very faint, given it's being filtered through your coffin's sturdy lid, but you recognize it. So, you're awake then, are you, dear one? The gravedigger says. She sighs. Then she says in a perplexed sort of voice, Now that is a pickle. I was hoping you'd be asleep a couple hours more, so the last time we spoke could have been on better terms. If you kept screaming like that, I'm gonna feel bad. Your companion's words, so distant, are unmistakable. You're so tense, you're attuned to every single syllable, and each of them makes you gasp. This is not a mistake, then? Does she truly mean to bury you alive? You posit this question to the gravedigger as best you can, trying to keep the tremors from your voice as you do. Perhaps you think in your optimism that if you don't let her know how afraid you are, she'll reward you for your bravery and let you go. If this is what you're hoping, though, it is in vain. That's right. You really do catch on quick. So it would appear she really has committed the task of burying you. What an unfortunate turn of events. Why, though, would she do such a thing? You thought that she was your friend. As it turns out, you can't trust anybody. We are friends, the gravedigger says, her voice still worryingly offhand, worryingly empty. I'm very fond of you. There's nobody dearer to me than you. I've had a really good time with you these last... As long as it's been again, I don't remember. Neither do you. Well, if this little detail has slipped off your minds, it can't be all that important. You have other things to worry about. If you really are friends, you say to the gravedigger, then what does she hope to gain by burying you? You do not understand. But you understand her reply even less. Well, here's the thing, the gravedigger says in a reasonable sort of voice, as though burying somebody alive could ever be thought as of a reasonable action. I've been digging graves for a long time, you see. You cannot see. It is too dark, but you affirm that you do all the same. Well, I was digging all these graves, but I've not had anybody put them in. Not for ages. It was rather sad. You think you know where this train of logic, twisted though it is, might be going, so you do not interrupt her. You know no good would come out of it. All you can do for the present is lie there and listen. I was thinking, I'd never find another person to bury this godforsaken village. Not after the plague messed everything up. I was getting desperate. Until you came along, that is. Now that I have somebody they can bury, I'm not going to let the opportunity pass me by. I'm sorry, but this is just part of my job. It's what my father taught me to do. It's all I know how to do. I buried my mother, and I buried my father. I buried all my friends. Now I'm going to bury you too. It is sound logic in a sense. As the daughter of a gravedigger, digging graves is her job, but something about it rankles you. If only you could put your finger on it. If only... Ah yes. There's a bit of a flaw of her reasoning, is there not? You're not dead after all. You might not be dead now, the gravedigger says in response to your ingenuity. Ingenuity? I remember not knowing how to say that word. Ingenuity. But you will be if given enough time. I mean, everybody else I ever known's died. Who's to say you would be next? It seems rather more likely that you will die, and quickly if she persists with her poorly thought out plan to bury you. Your coffin is not very large, it affords you precious little space. Eventually, if traveled in for long enough, you'll run out of oxygen, then you'll suffocate. That or you'll starve to death. That's what I was saying. Either way, your demise will be a slow and painful one. You're unsure which death would be worse, though given how precarious your situation is, you do not wish to expend the necessary energy needed to ponder it. You need to plead to the gravedigger quickly while she's still here. You need to tell her, tearfully, that you would not leave her. Why would you? You try to sound as convincing as your disordered nerves will allow, but the gravedigger remains unmoved. You say that, she says, but how can I know you're telling the truth? I thought you said you were a traveler. They never stay put in one place for long. You get sick of me before long, and then you leave me. This way, at least, I can be assured we'll always stay together. If I bury you like I did the others, we'll never be far apart. I even took care to put you in a nice spot, close to my home. So you're only a stone's throw away, really. Is that nice? Privately, you think that the gravedigger has a different conception of the word nice to you. You do not say this, however. You cannot say much of anything because the panic has begun to set in. It is choking you. Stopping up your throat so you can only cry. You scream. You beg and you plead, but there's little good. The gravedigger's already buried her mother. She's already buried her little brothers. She's even buried her father, whom she loved above all else. She thinks by burying you, she's doing unto you an act of great kindness. You think that she's going to kill you. In a sense, you're both right. Your opinions are so diametrically opposed on this matter, however, that you'll never be able to find any common ground. Might as well save your screaming. She will not listen to you. She's beyond listening. Shush, shush, dear one, says the gravedigger very gently, just as gently as she spoke last night, when she confided in you all of her fears. It won't be so bad, really. Nothing will be able to hurt you down there. It'll be just like going to sleep for a really, really long time. You can rest, and while you rest, I'll tend to you. I'll plant flowers on your grave. You'd like that, wouldn't you? This way, we can always be together, and I'll never be lonely again. While the gravedigger speaks, she begins to pile even more soil onto the roof of your coffin. The sound of dirt on top of you, on your arms, your legs, and your head, conceals your companion's final words. But you cannot hear her. You cannot hear anything beyond the sounds of the dirt, and the scrapings of the shovel, and your own desperate, frantic screams. You scream and you scream and you scream without cease, until your throat feels hoarse, but your efforts are in vain. You hammer on the lid of the coffin as much strength as you can muster, but the lid of the coffin is nailed shut. You're in no position to remove it. All you can do is lie there, screaming and crying and banging your fists on the roof of the coffin over and over, as more dirt and debris falls on top of you. Eventually, enough dirt falls on you to stifle your screams for good. The gravedigger can no longer hear you, and you can no longer hear her. You're all alone, trapped in a narrow wooden box which, regardless of what you want, is now your new home. You can smell the soil in the backs of your nostrils when you inhale. It's so potent you can taste it in your tongue. You can taste the eventual, inedible decay of your own body. You'll remain trapped here, underground, forever and ever. Or, to use less melodramatic terms, until the last of your energy escapes you, and you succumb to your own slow suffocation. This is a very pleasant way to go, but you forgive me if my sympathy is limited. You did bring this upon yourself, you know. You reap what you sow. In your case, you made a series of bad decisions that led to your untimely demise. Now, what do you want to do? Will you accept this fate of yours and rest in peace? Or will you try to fight against it? Okay, we have the same choice as we did last time. Well, obviously, let me save the game again. I don't know if it matters, I guess, but let's do it. Alright. So, do we just die a very slow death? You know how the gravedigger says something about how she was keeping sane by digging graves and to not lose her own madness? I don't know about that. I think she went insane a long time ago, as it turns out. Very similar to the situation we had last time, where apparently you love something so much you want to kill it, so you get to keep it. I don't know, that it makes no sense, but I guess these people are insane. I don't know. But alright, you can choose to accept or fight against your fate. I guess, you know what else are we gonna do? I guess I guess I'll just die. You know that meme? I guess I'll just die. Very well then, enjoy your eternal slumber. I suppose it's good night for now, but it is not goodbye. You cannot escape from me, even you're buried deep beneath the earth. Where there's a will, there's a way. And even if the whole world has forsaken you, I never will. I will never leave you. You will never be lonely again. Oop, and then he goes back to the title. So obviously, I feel like, yeah, if you choose that choice, you just die, that's it. And it just loops back here. Obviously, let's go back and choose the other one then, in that case. Okay, well, and thus, to fight against our fate, we punch the coffin so hard, create a hole in it, and therefore we Shoryuken threw the coffin into the gravedigger's face, and smack her into the sky. No, probably not. And we're just gonna choose fight against our fate. Are you not happy with the hand that the fate has dealt you? Very well, I cannot blame you. It is quite a grim ending. I will not wish it upon my worst enemy, and you're rather dearer to me than that. Now, why don't we give this another go? Just try not to be buried alive this time. I can only endure so much of your screaming. It's a bit of a nuisance. Your fate, once again, is in your hands. Now I wonder, which path will you take? You know what they say? Third time's the charm. I guess maybe if we go to this castle, we won't die again? Maybe. I guess we'll see.